December 24, 2025. Story 1. Venezuela called U.S. actions the greatest extortion in history at an emergency UN Security Council meeting. Russia and China condemned the tanker seizures and boat bombings. U.S. Ambassador Waltz announced sanctions to the maximum extent. Critics warned the U.S. is pursuing regime change to appropriate Venezuela's oil, the world's largest reserves. Venezuela's National Assembly passed a law enacting harsh penalties for piracy in response. Takeaway. When a target country passes laws specifically responding to U.S. actions, they're preparing legal frameworks for retaliation or prosecution. Venezuela is documenting its position for international audiences. Story 2. Defense Minister Katz walked back settlement comments but said Israel will never leave Gaza and could establish military outposts in the north. Since October, Israel has built at least 13 new military outposts inside Gaza along the Yellow Line according to satellite imagery. Netanyahu's former spokesperson said Netanyahu asked him after October 7 to create a plan to avoid blame for the security failure, and was instructed to silence calls for accountability. Netanyahu appeared in court Tuesday on bribery, fraud, and breach of trust charges. Takeaway. 13 military outposts built during a ceasefire is the permanent presence being constructed in real time. The spokesperson's accusation, if credible, means October 7 accountability was actively suppressed from the start. That's evidence for future proceedings. Story 3. Greta Thunberg was arrested in London for protesting in solidarity with Palestine Action hunger strikers. She held a sign saying, "I support the Palestine Action prisoners, I oppose genocide." 2 hunger strikers have refused food for over 50 days with doctors warning they're at risk of death. Takeaway. High-profile arrests bring attention to causes that would otherwise fade. The hunger strikers are now past the medical danger threshold, the next days determine outcomes. Story 4. Under enormous pressure, DOJ released over 11,000 files totaling nearly 30,000 pages. The documents include 2019 FBI emails mentioning 10 possible Epstein co-conspirators, including a wealthy Ohio businessman, with several served grand jury subpoenas in Florida, Boston, New York, and Connecticut. Ghislaine Maxwell remains the only accomplice criminally charged. DOJ is desperately seeking outside attorneys to work on redactions. Takeaway. 10 co-conspirators identified in FBI emails, subpoenas served, and only Maxwell charged. The gap between investigation and prosecution is the story. The desperation for redaction help suggests the volume exceeds their capacity to manage. Story 5. The Supreme Court blocked National Guard deployment to Chicago in a 6-3 decision, ruling the government failed to identify authority allowing military to execute laws in Illinois. Governor Pritzker called it a big win for American democracy. Minutes later, Louisiana's Governor Landry announced 350 National Guard heading to New Orleans through February. DOJ is suing Illinois over laws restricting immigration arrests at courthouses, hospitals, daycares, and universities. Takeaway. The Supreme Court ruling applies to Illinois, not nationally. Louisiana immediately demonstrated the workaround. States with protective laws face federal lawsuits. The legal landscape varies by state. Know yours. Story 6. ICE's Operation Midway Blitz arrested over 4,000 people in Chicago. Data shows only 15% had criminal offenses, mostly minor traffic violations, misdemeanors, or nonviolent felonies. Governor Pritzker's spokesperson said, "Masked agents are not targeting the worst of the worst. They're harassing law-abiding U.S. citizens and black and brown people." Takeaway. 15% with any criminal record means 85% had none. When enforcement data contradicts stated rationale, the data tells you the actual target population. Story 7. A federal judge ordered restoration of over $233 million in disaster aid to 12 states, including Connecticut, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New York, and Washington, that the administration cut for refusing immigration cooperation. Takeaway. Courts are reversing funding cuts used as leverage. But the administration keeps trying new pressure points. The pattern is cut, sue, restore, try something else. States win battles while fighting a war of attrition. Story 8. The VA banned abortion care for veterans nationwide, including in cases of rape, incest, or threats to life, even in states where abortion is legal. The Center for Reproductive Rights said Trump promised to leave abortion to the states but continues restricting it nationally. Takeaway. Federal institutions can impose nationwide restrictions regardless of state law for people under their care. If you or anyone you know receives VA healthcare, this is immediate. The exception for life-threatening situations is gone. Story 9. The administration will resume garnishing wages from student loan defaulters in January. Education Secretary McMahon said 1,000 borrowers have already been notified. Approximately 5 million people are in default. The administration already began withholding tax refunds and Social Security benefits while slashing affordable repayment options. Takeaway. If you're in default or know anyone who is, January is when garnishment resumes. The combination of reduced repayment options plus enforcement escalation is designed to maximize pressure. Contact a student loan advocate now, not after garnishment starts. Story 10. Sudan's Prime Minister presented a UN peace plan requiring RSF withdrawal, disarmament, and camps for fighters not implicated in war crimes. The RSF is highly unlikely to agree. A UN official warned weapons continue flowing into Sudan with no accountability. Human rights groups called on the US to end arms transfers to the UAE until it stops arming RSF, which the State Department assessed as committing genocide. Takeaway. The State Department's own genocide assessment creates legal exposure for continued arms transfers. The gap between assessment and policy is where accountability arguments live. Story 11. Longtime immigrant rights activist Jeanette Vizgara was released after nearly 10 months in ICE detention, reuniting with her family. She gained national attention in 2017 when she took sanctuary in a Denver church with her 4 children. Takeaway. 10 months of detention ended by legal pressure and public attention. Visibility and legal advocacy together produce outcomes that neither achieves alone. Story 12. Betty Reed Soskin, the country's oldest park ranger, died at 104. She became a ranger at 85 at the Rosie the Riveter National Historical Park. During World War II, she worked in a segregated Union Hall. In the 1960s, she held fundraisers for the Black Panthers. She said, "I'm making every little girl of color aware of a career choice she may not have known she had." Takeaway. She started her most visible work at 85. The timeline of a life doesn't have to follow expected patterns. That's December 24th.